Let's bring in Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live co-host and contributed Football Night in America. Man, little vitriol, it feels like, from the Giants towards Tiki Barber towards Saquon that he made a good business decision. I'm just surprised that the Eagles, was this a real need for them to get Saquon Barkley?
Well, I think, Dan, that the best way to build a team is from the inside out. The Eagles already have their team built from the inside out. Once you build from the inside out, you can focus on the luxury pieces on the outside. And for them to get a guy like Saquon Barkley, who can now have his full talents showcased and unleashed on the Giants. I mean, that's what makes this so emotional for Giants fans. Because look, folks, he was there for 6 years. He never got a big payday from the Giants. They never gave him a second contract. He finished 3 years and became eligible for one. He didn't get one. Now he had injuries. But still, after 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, they never gave him one. The Eagles swoop in with the contract the Giants never gave him. What's he supposed to do? What's he supposed to do? But it's the Eagles. They hate the Eagles. They love the Giants. It reminds me of the old Jerry Seinfeld bit about all we're really doing is rooting for laundry. Once you change into a different shirt, we hate you. When you're in the right shirt, we love you. But now, boo, different shirt. That's why they're mad.
The team that had the best day yesterday is who?
Well, look, I'm a firm believer in being careful the first day of free agency, because how many times do we actually look at one of these big spending days and say, oh, wow, they've solved all their problems and they're headed to the Super Bowl. But when you look at what the Eagles did with Saquon Barkley, with Bryce Huff, who is one of the more underrated pass rushers in the NFL, had 10 sacks last year and didn't start a single game, had pressures according to Next Gen Stats like more than 1 out of every 5 plays. He had a pressure on the quarterback. This is a team that's already really good, and it's finding ways to get better. Overpaying, yes, you always overpay the first day of free agency, but when you're already an elite team and you have the cap space to target guys that make you better on both sides of the ball, that's a win.
I thought Green Bay had a good day yesterday. What do you think?
Well, look, the Josh Jacobs move was stunning. And when you see 4 years, $48 million, you say, wow, that's a lot of money for a guy that's got a lot of wear and tear on the frame from the years in Las Vegas. But when you look at the deal, it's just a 1-year commitment. Now, they're going to pay him a lot this first year, and then they can keep him for the second year. But after that, if he's playing well, you keep him around. But this is what they need for that offense to fully unleash Jordan Love. I mean, they got something in Jordan Love, and they've gone out and they've added pieces around him now, and they're trying to make their move to be an elite team.
What are the Vikings doing?
Damned if I know. Well, look, a year ago, the vibe that I picked up was, let's just get through this Kirk Cousins contract, and then let's move on to try to find a long-term answer at the position. They haven't had a true franchise quarterback since Fran Tarkenton. That's the truth. And Cousins is the first one to start 8 or more games every year for 6 straight years since Cousins did it, or Tarkenton did it for 7 straight years back in the 70s. They want that long-term guy. And now I think what's going to happen is with the 11th pick in the draft, they're possibly going to try to move up, possibly stay put. Sam Darnold is the bridge. And, one of the realities that the Vikings now have, Kevin O'Connell gets the most out of whoever you put in front of him. So what we saw from Cousins the last couple of years, is that O'Connell? Can O'Connell do that with Sam Darnold? Will O'Connell be doing it with whoever they draft if they get the guy they want? But I think that's been the play all along. Too much money tied up in Cousins. Cousins getting closer to 40. Time to try to find that guy in his early 20s that can be the quarterback for 5, 10 years, maybe longer. You get an elite quarterback, that's how you compete for championships, and the Vikings know that.
Yeah, and I understand what the Vikings were doing. A guy coming off Achilles surgery, he's 35, soon to be 36, and you have weapons already there, and you haven't gotten very far. He's got 1 playoff win in his career, and we're going to spend $180 million or whatever it's going to be. Atlanta, what's Atlanta going to get, and how much better is Kirk Cousins going to make them?
Well, they don't know what they're going to get because, and this is where the tampering that is so rampant becomes clear and obvious. how in the hell did the Falcons get to the point where they were comfortable 2.5 hours into the negotiating window with the recovery by Kirk Cousins from his torn Achilles tendon to make a $180 million contract offer? Boy, that's a lot of work that got done in 2.5 hours by the Atlanta Falcons. But when you consider how lost they've been at the quarterback position since Matt Ryan was traded to the Colts a couple of years ago, this is to them a no-brainer. Let's spend the money. Let's make the team better. Let's see what we can do by way of upgrading the quarterback position and getting the most out of our weapons in Kyle Pitts and Drake London and Bijan Robinson. So they're going to find out. And it's a risk. It's a calculated risk, especially once you tear that Achilles on one side, the other one can go too. And it's an older athlete injury, and he's going to be 36, as you said. It's a real risk for the Falcons.
He's Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live co-host, contributor to Football Night in America. I want to give you credit because you were the first to kind of put out the breadcrumbs that Kirk Cousins, that his family, you were hearing that they could be moving to Georgia, which is where his wife is from, and then the speculation started that is Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta. So you might have taken some bullets there from people when you put out that initially, but I'm going to bring it back.
Well, and I appreciate, it's funny, and I appreciate you saying that. And look, what I said last week would have been right if he'd stayed in Minnesota. The fact that he went to Atlanta just shines a light on the fact that, yes, they were looking for schools and houses in Atlanta. And no, it wasn't just a leverage play to get the Vikings to pay more. And, I don't just put out there everything I hear. If I hear something that I think is credible, I start, you scratch, you talk to the right people, you confirm it, and then you talk about it. And it was true. They were looking at where they would live in Atlanta and where the boys will go to school. That's a huge factor for them. When you uproot the lives of two young children, you better be comfortable about where you are putting them once you make that move. And yeah, but if he had stayed in Minnesota, it was still true. But obviously, I'd be hearing something far different this week.
Justin Fields, possible destinations. Got one?
No. And, Dan, at some point, what the Bears need to do is say, you know what? We're not going to get anything close to what we thought we were going to get for Justin Fields. So let's see what happens after round one of the draft. Because maybe one of these teams that is thinking they're going to get their long-term answer via the first round doesn't get him. And we got a market in that 18 hours between round one and round two. And then if that doesn't happen, let's say they take Caleb Williams, they have Justin Fields, a trade market doesn't develop after round one, why not hold on to him? Look at what happened last year. All the quarterbacks that got injured. And the Browns are proposing moving the trade deadline from the Tuesday after week 8 until the Tuesday after week 10. That's 10 weeks of opportunities for a starting quarterback to get injured and somebody to say, we got to give up whatever we have to give up to get Justin Fields. If they can make that work, if they can keep Fields from, getting too frustrated and not being a team player, they could maybe wait for the right opportunity and get the value in September or October that they're not going to get now.
Any chance the Bears don't take Caleb Williams?
I'd be stunned if they don't. I really would be stunned. He checks all the boxes. He gets it, mature, serious about his craft. I'd be stunned unless the only very small, and this is ridiculously small because he didn't do the medicals at the combine, when they bring him into Chicago, if they find something that freaks them out, then I assume they'd pivot to Jaden Daniels. But the idea of Fields being QB1 all year long without another guy being added, I think that ship sailed for the Bears. And if they can't trade Fields, they're not going to go back on their plan, I believe, to take a quarterback with the first overall pick.
Jerry Jones says the Cowboys are all in this season. What does that mean?
Well, this is what's great about Jerry Jones. It means whatever he wants it to mean. It means whatever he can conjure when he's pressed. What does all in mean? Oh, it means this. Oh, it means that. Oh, it means this. What it meant yesterday is they were all out because they didn't do anything. The only team that didn't make a move on the first day of the legal tampering period of free agency. And one of the reasons they can't make a move is they got this Dak Prescott cap number, $59.4 million for 2024. They got to do something about that before they know where they're going to have room to maneuver. They got Micah Parsons eligible for a new deal. You got CeeDee Lamb, who's ready for his second contract. Yeah, all in is just, and Dan, the more I hear from Jerry Jones, the more I think that this nonsense about I want to win the Super Bowl and you'd be stunned at the size of the check I'd write if I knew that it would deliver a Super Bowl. I think that that's just a lot of baloney. And he's just trying to keep the Cowboys as the most talked about team, America's team. I mean, think about it. The fact that the Cowboys are still the best draw in the NFL after not going to an NFC Championship game for 30 years, that's more impressive than winning one Super Bowl. He's kept that team relevant, and we're talking about him now because he's always got something that stirs it up and makes people think that they're all in, when who the hell knows what all in is, and they're not going to be all in the NFC Championship game again this year.
Yeah, so you think he's satisfied with being relevant,
Yes.
not necessarily being elite?
You know, all these teams say, we want to win the Super Bowl every year. We want to win the Super Bowl every year. Well, if that's truly the way you measure success, you're pissed off a lot. For Jerry Jones, you're pissed off for 3 full decades. Meanwhile, he's got a giant yacht. He's worth billions. And the Cowboys are the most valuable property in the entire NFL, even though they haven't played for the right to go to the Super Bowl since 1995. He, I think, secretly values what the Cowboys are more than this. And you look, your competitive nature takes over at some point. Yeah, you'd like to win a Super Bowl, but he's winning a much bigger game. And he's got the biggest and best team in the NFL, despite the lack of accomplishments for 30 years.
What should we look out for the rest of this week?
Well, look, Derrick Henry's still out there. Danielle Hunter's still out there. The big names that don't do a deal right away, that means that maybe they expected more than what's out there. And what you're going to see is the one-year deals. The guys who didn't get what they want, they do the one-year deal and they kick it to next year and they try it again. And sometimes it works. Look what it did for Baker Mayfield, the one-year deal last year. Now he's got a $100 million contract sort of with the Buccaneers. So the one-year deals are going to start happening in the next couple of days.
And Russell Wilson has a one-year deal in Pittsburgh. What do you think of this move?
I love it. And the Steelers had some sort of a change of approach here because they had leaked to Jerry Dulac of the Post-Gazette last month. They're not interested in a veteran quarterback who has aspirations to start. At the scouting combine, that was the vibe. Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph. That's what they're doing. That was the clear understanding I got when you're kind of immersed in everything NFL related. And then out of the blue, here comes Russell Wilson. And they handed it to Dulac. I don't want to go too far inside baseball here, but I don't think it's a coincidence that they handed that news to Dulac to make up for the fact that they burned him with the last one on we're not interested in a quarterback who wants to start. They got interested in Russell Wilson. And it's as simple as, Dan, if he's going to play for $1.21 million, I mean, Mitch Trubisky just signed for a $2.75 million base in Buffalo to clearly be the backup to Josh Allen. $1.21 million, dollar for dollar, that is the best bargain you're going to get. The Steelers have $5 million in cap space tied up now in their top 2 quarterbacks. That leaves $250 million for the rest of the team. And if Russ plays like he did in Seattle, if he doesn't try to do too much, run the offense, roll out once in a while and fire a deep ball to Deontay Johnson or George Pickens, you couple that with that defense, this is a way for Russell Wilson to turn his career around. I love this move.
I think Pittsburgh would take what Russ did last year in Denver. I think
not a bad point. Not a bad point. And that's the thing. Even though it drove Sean Payton crazy, the pre-snap stuff, not getting the play in fast enough, not making the adjustments ahead of time for that very specific and detailed offense, what let Russ cook means is let him get the ball in his hands. When he gets the ball in his hands and things go sideways, he'll spin again. He'll find Cortland Sutton. This time it's going to be George Pickens or Deontay Johnson. He's got a knack for making magic when the play that was called doesn't work the way it was intended. That's what he can still do, and that's what the Steelers haven't had since Roethlisberger was in his prime.
The NFL sets up its offseason calendar unbelievably. I mean, they know what they're doing. So you got this month, then you're going to have the draft, and then pull out from the draft, and then they give all the other sports a chance to make some headlines, and then they're going to come back in July and August, and then they're going to dominate again.
The fact that we know what the regular season games will be next year, we know all of the opponents, where they'll play their games. We just don't know when. And the mere act at some point in May of announcing the when is bigger than anything else that happens in sports. They've got it figured out. And I don't know how much of it was deliberate and accidental, but they've got it figured out.
Good to talk to you as always, Mike.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dan.
All right.
See you, buddy.
It's Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk Live co-host, and you can see him and Chris Sims, their show, Precedes Ours on Peacock.